let's talk about one thing that is on everybody's mind when it comes to the issue of Sam Harris. This issue of the nuclear first strike. This is the issue that Sam and his supporters point to most often for he is so misrepresented. By the way, quick sidebar here on, has there ever been a critic of Sam Harris who has not been accused of misrepresenting him? That's a literal question. I'm not sure there is. Why? Because Sam Harris, as you'll see in this same segment, says two things at the same time. It's terrible, but we should do it, or maybe we should do it. It's terrible. I said it's terrible. You're misrepresenting me, right? You'll see it here in this example. And so then later he can turn around and say, oh, you misrepresented me. You're a dishonest person. You see how you misrepresented me? Everybody go out and hate him, okay? Now, let's take this example and break it down. We will not be misrepresenting. We're going to give him as much context as we can to this quote so that you guys can make the call. And a lot of you, I'm positive, will disagree with me even after reading this. But I want to give you a fair chance so that you at least know what you're defending, okay? So, Sam writes in his book, it should be of particular concern to us that the beliefs of Muslims pose a special problem for nuclear deterrence. There is little possibility of our having a Cold War with an Islamist regime armed with long-range nuclear weapons. A Cold War requires that parties be mutually deterred by the threat of death. Notions of martyrdom and jihad run roughshod over the logic that allowed the United States and the Soviet Union to pass half a century perched more or less stably on the brink of Armageddon. What will we do if an Islamist regime, which grows dewy-eyed at the mere mention of paradise, ever acquires long-range nuclear weaponry? If history is any guide, we will not be sure about where the offending warheads are or what their state of readiness is. And so we will be unable to rely on targeted conventional weapons to destroy them. In such a situation, the only thing likely to ensure our survival may be a nuclear first strike of our own. Needless to say, this would be an unthinkable crime, as it would kill tens of millions of innocent civilians in a single day. But it may be the only course of action available to us, given what the Islamists believe. Okay. Now, he said it was an unthinkable crime, and then he said, maybe we should do it. Now, not today, not randomly, but what if an Islamist, a dangerous, dangerous Islamist regime who cannot be trusted to act rationally, had one? Well, then maybe we'd have to kill tens of millions of civilians. All right, now this is one of his famous thought experiments. I'm just saying. So now let's take the same thought experiment and just do one simple change the location, and see if it's still a maybe. A radical sovereign citizen group in America who hates the government gets a hold of a nuclear warhead. They might launch it towards Washington, but they're in Tallahassee. You know what? You don't like that example? Let's stick with the Islamists. An ISIS guy is infiltrated. We got a sleeper cell. They're in Tallahassee, but we can't tell where in Tallahassee, and they might launch against Washington. Do we nuke Florida and kill tens of millions of innocent civilians that are American civilians? Would anyone think that that was reasonable and within the range of consideration? Of course not. Those are American civilians. They count. They matter. Now, let's say an ISIS guy gets a warhead, but God damn it, he's in a sleeper cell in Tel Aviv. Thought exercise. What if we kill 10 million Jews to make sure we get that guy? Because he might launch against Seattle or San Antonio or Washington or other parts of Israel. Now, you tell me anyone who does that thought exercise about killing 10 million Jews to get the bad guys, even if they're the guys you hate, would still have a job. Does anybody think that? Okay, I'm sure some of you will say, of course, it's just a thought exercise. If a Palestinian professor has a thought exercise about killing 10 million innocent civilian Jews in Israel, of course he'd have his job. If he was a Muslim government worker in America and he had that thought experiment, of course he'd keep his job. Maybe. I tend to doubt it, right? You know why? This is a terrible thing to bring up as a maybe. I don't want 10 million innocent civilians killed in America. I don't want them killed in Tel Aviv, and I don't want them killed in the middle of the Middle East. It doesn't make it any better that there are 10 million innocent Muslim civilians. Unless, of course, you think they're all kind of Islamist anyway. What difference does it make? Now, he didn't say that. He said unthinkable crime, but maybe. No, not maybe. The fact that you could countenance that and then pose it as kind of more of like a fantasy than a thought experiment, like, right? And it's funny how all these thought experiments have Muslims as the victims. I don't mean like they're the bad guys, obviously, the Islamists, right? But maybe we should profile, actually not maybe, we should profile them, anti-profile, hilarious distinction. He just came out and said he agrees with Ted Cruz on the policy of doing a religious test to get into this country, that if you're a Syrian refugee, we should let the Christians in, but not let the Muslims in. So that's not a maybe. That was a definite. He just said it in a podcast this week, okay? So there are real policy implications. These are not just thought experiments. These have real effects, right? He is in favor of Ted Cruz's policy to keep the Muslim Syrian refugees out, but make sure you do a religious test and bring in the other religions. Okay, so then the torture, that's also Muslims that we should consider torturing, but maybe. It's terrible to torture them, but maybe, right? You can read those texts for yourself. It's in his book, okay? And in this case, it's so terrible to kill 10 million innocent civilians, but maybe. No, there is no maybe there. If you think maybe and you think 10 million innocent civilians, think about that, man. Family upon family, kids on top of kids, grandmothers, aunts, uncles. You know what happens in a nuclear explosion? Their bodies explode. And you think maybe. I get it. In this idea, they have a nuke and we're not sure they're going to launch it. So we kill 10 million of them first? That's not a maybe for me. I think for a lot of decent human beings, that's not a maybe. But for some of you, if you think that's a maybe, okay, then at least we're clear on it, and you're on his side, and God bless, okay, at least we know where we stand, and I'm on this side, and proud to be on this side. By the way, Sam's not the only one who does the maybe trick, and it's terrible, but we should consider it. There's a guy running for president who's fairly popular right now who does it all the time, Donald Trump. Listen to this. About the mosque, he says, certain things will be done that we never thought would happen in this country in terms of information and learning about the enemy. We're going to have to do things that were frankly unthinkable a year ago. We're going to have to look at a lot of things very closely. Maybe. I mean, it's terrible. It was unthinkable a year ago. But now I'm thinking about it. It's a thought experiment, except if I'm president, it won't be an experiment anymore. It'll be real. Okay, now here's more of that on similar issues from Trump.
Is that something that you would consider doing as president?
Well, I would hate to do it, but it's something that you're going to have to strongly consider. So it's something that many people, not me, it's something that many people are considering and many people are going to do.
Not me. I didn't say it. But maybe we have to do it. You know, it's bad, but it looks like we're going to have to do it because what choice do we have? Where have I seen that before? One more.
Nobody wants to say this, and nobody wants to shut down religious institutions or anything, but, you understand it. A lot of people understand it. We're going to have no choice. There's absolutely no choice. Some really bad things are happening, and they're happening fast.
What starts out as a thought experiment and a maybe turns into, but they're so bad. They're so irredeemable. These particular set of people are so bad, we don't have a choice. And all of a sudden, it's policy. That's your leading contender on the Republican side. If he becomes president, it's not an experiment anymore. And then Ted Cruz, specific policy position, saying, I will keep out the Muslim Syrian refugees. I will do a religious test in America. Previously, unthinkable. Now, everybody's having a thought experiment about it. And Sam says, it's not an experiment anymore. We should do that policy. Okay, if you believe in religious tests, and some of you do, I know. You think that Muslims are irredeemable, too high a percentage of them are Islamists, right? And they're the Muslims, and you got to watch out for them. And so we should do a religious test. We should keep out the Muslims. We should profile them, maybe ID badges, maybe, and all the other maybes, okay? Okay, then we're clear. You're on that side. The rest of us are on this side, and now go ahead and launch. Even though I've given you full context, tell me how the beloved Dr. Harris is once again misrepresented by his own words and misunderstood by feeble minds like Noam Chomsky. Oh, Dr. Harris, what have they done to you? Go forward.